I give the floor to the representative of Syrian Arab Republic.
Madam President, we meet for yet another Council meeting on the political and humanitarian situation and other issues in the Syrian Arab Republic. Up to 4 sessions are held every month on these issues. It seems that some members of the Council regard these sessions as a waste of the Council's time and resources, especially as they still insist on ignoring the fundamental challenges that Syria is confronted with, specifically terrorism, continued violations of Syrian sovereignty, and the tremendous suffering of the Syrian people as a result of unilateral coercive measures. A week ago, forces of the Turkish regime and its terrorist mercenaries launched a series of military attacks targeting the north of the Syrian Arab Republic. They claimed the lives of a number of civilians and military personnel, and they caused serious damage to civilian infrastructure in these areas, in flagrant violation of the international law, the international humanitarian law, and the United Nations Charter. The Syrian Arab Republic condemns in the strongest terms the Turkish attacks. The pretexts used by the Turkish regime to justify these attacks have been exposed and no longer fool anyone, especially as the Turkish regime continues to support terrorist groups and is sponsoring to this day Daesh and al-Nusra Front. Syria calls upon the Security Council to compel the Turkish regime to end its illegal military presence on Syrian territories immediately. This council should also not ignore the continued illegal presence of US forces on Syria's territories. They are supporting militias in the northeast. This is another violation of the UN Charter and Syria's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity. My delegation, once again, demands an immediate withdrawal of US forces without any preconditions. Madam President, the Security Council remains silent while Israel's occupation of the Syrian Golan persists, as do its practices against our people in the Golan. This is consistent with the subversive role played by the United States and Turkey on Syrian territory. The Council's silence emboldened Israel to expand its attacks on Syrian territory, using flimsy excuses. Israel also attacks civilian infrastructure, leading to casualties among civilians and military personnel, and this can lead to a dangerous escalation in the region. Madam President, in parallel to countering terrorism, the Syrian state has been pursuing local settlements and national reconciliations. We have taken a number of important measures, including the issuance of amnesty decrees by the President of the Republic, the latest of which was Decree number 7 of 2022. It is comprehensive in scope and in the way it deals with terrorist crimes. Such measures were taken to ensure a return to normalcy, to enhance national unity, and that has allowed many Syrians to go back to their normal lives. It is surprising that despite all these efforts, some still insist on ignoring the achievements of the Syrian state in this regard. Syria has been engaging positively with initiatives to settle the Syrian crisis in a way that is Syrian-led and Syrian-owned without any foreign interference. In this regard, it is important for the Special Envoy to continue to play his role as facilitator, as stipulated in his mandate. Madam President, concerning the humanitarian situation, the Syrian Arab Republic is doing its utmost to provide the necessary assistance to all Syrians without discrimination and to improve their living conditions and to provide the basic services. Syria is cooperating with the United Nations and its humanitarian agencies in Syria to achieve this aim. It is important to support the efforts of the Syrian state in this regard. We call upon Western states to stop politicizing humanitarian work in Syria. They must uphold the guiding principles of humanitarian action and honor their pledges to provide the necessary funding to the humanitarian response plan in Syria. Above all, they must expand and support early recovery projects as stipulated in Resolution 2642. Less than 42% of the necessary funding has been provided thus far, and we're approaching a new year. Mines and unexploded ordnance planted by terrorist groups have claimed the lives of hundreds of women, children, and farmers. We need to focus on clearing Syrian territories of mines and ordnance. We must provide the necessary funding for these activities that would contribute to the return of the displaced refugees to their villages, their homes, their lands, and that would allow them to go back to their normal lives. Madam President, my delegation expresses its outrage at the refusal of some Western states in this council to invite Ms. Alina Douam, the Special Rapporteur on the negative impact of the unilateral coercive measures on the enjoyment of human rights, to participate in the informal interactive dialogue that was held on the 21st of November. We believe this to be an attempt by these countries to obfuscate the recommendations and conclusions of the Special Rapporteur, an attempt to hide their true intentions. The Special Rapporteur has exposed the false claims by these countries on the unilateral coercive measures imposed by the United States and the European Union on the Syrian people. These measures have led to the death of innocent Syrians and the death of innocent people in any country on which these measures are imposed. I refer here to the statements by the Special Rapporteur that these measures are inconsistent with international rules. They are being imposed to exercise pressure on Syria. They increase the suffering of the Syrian people and obstruct early recovery efforts. They also cause a severe shortage of medication and specialized medical equipment needed to treat rare and chronic diseases. They also impede access to food, water, electricity, fuel, means of transportation, and healthcare. This has grave repercussions on public health and food security. This is why the Special Rapporteur stressed the need to lift these measures immediately. Madam President, when speaking about the different aspects of humanitarian suffering in Syria, we must address the continued systematic plundering by the U.S. occupation forces of Syrian resources, oil, wheat, and other agricultural produce. We must also refer to the Turkish regime and its mercenaries that is using water as a weapon against civilians. They're halting the operation of the Alhakam water station and depriving millions of Syrians in Hasaka and its surroundings of water. They're manipulating the water levels of the Euphrates River, which increases the likelihood of thirst, diseases, especially the spread of cholera. Madam President, the Syrian Arab Republic condemns Western states that continue to send delegations to the northern part of Syria, infiltrating Syrian territories illegally. Most recently, France and the Netherlands have sent delegations this way. Syria stresses that these practices constitute a violation of Syrian sovereignty and relevant Security Council resolutions. In conclusion, Madam President, the delegation of the Syrian Arab Republic stresses that council meetings on the situation in Syria would remain pointless if the fundamental challenges are not addressed. Syria needs to fight terrorism, stop terrorism financing and terrorism sponsoring. It needs to end the illegal US and Turkish military presence on Syrian territories. It must put an end to Israeli attacks on Syrian territories, and it must ensure the immediate lifting of the unilateral coercive measures that can only be described as inhumane and immoral. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic for their statement.